Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about how to construct a frequency distribution, including relative frequency and cumulative relative frequency, and a histogram in Excel. I know we've already been doing these by hand, but doing them in Excel is much quicker and faster, especially when we have huge data sets with maybe hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, even more numbers or words in them. So first thing I want to do is I want to show you how to get to the files that we will use mainly for classwork and homework that go along with our textbook. So what we're going to do, let me get this open. Okay, when you're in our Canvas course and you click on My Lab and Mastering, when you get in, you won't see this screen. There's some problems going on today. You will just see your normal everyday screen with your calendar, your assignment list, etc. We don't care about this screen for this, so it's fine. Over here on the left-hand menu, we want to scroll down and we want to click on Video Resource Library. Then we want to click on Learning Tools. Once we do that, scroll down in this screen until you see data sets. Click the blue link where it says download the data sets from the textbook. Now remember, in My Lab, anytime you see blue, it pretty much means it's a clickable link. The writing is in blue and then there's a blue underline. So we want to download these in Excel format. So I'm going to click this link. Now, the way this is working, y'all just give me a second. I've got to unshare and then I've got to share again to show you what's going to come up. So once you click that link, and depending on which browser you're using, open up the file, then you're going to see this list. You're going to see, well, first of all, you're going to see a list that has all the chapter names in it. We're in chapter 2, so I double clicked on the chapter 2 folder. These are all the files available for us to use in chapter 2. Now, I know that's a lot of files, okay? Don't worry, we're not going to use near all of these in a single chapter. We'll have fresh ones for every chapter, and we'll just pick and choose which ones we're going to use. So for today, let's use the file titled absence. It's like a list of the number of absences for different students. So I would double click to open that file. So you can be doing that if you're following along. I have to reshare my screen to get this open for you. Sorry, there's so much clicking and changing. We're almost done with this part. So this is how our file will open. Always make sure you go up here to the top and you click this Enable Editing button. If you don't, then you won't be able to do any work with the file. I'm going to zoom my screen so you can see better, but that's not something you have to do. Okay, so over here in our A column, we scroll down, we see we've just got lots of numbers. We've got 60 numbers. So I've got 60 students and I have recorded the number of absences for each of those students, okay? We don't need names in this problem, so we've just got the number of absences. Well, we know in frequency, we want to count how many times something occurs, but I can make Excel do that for me. First thing I need to do is I need to put these numbers in order from smallest to largest. To do that, I'm going to highlight all 60 of my numbers, and then I'm going to go over to the top right-hand corner where you see that AZ and the little like funnel, little filter sign. Click that and click Sort Smallest to Largest. Now see, my numbers are in order. I have to tell Excel what my classes are, what my categories, what I'm wanting it to count. Well, when I'm using numbers, I'm going to be using numbers for my categories. So what's my smallest number? 0. So I had students that had 0 absences. And if I scroll to the bottom, since they're now sorted, the most absences that any student had were 7. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 will be my classes. Excel uses the word bins instead of classes. So I'm going to go over here in the B column right next to my data set, and I'm going to put in my classes, my bins, so that Excel will know exactly what I'm wanting it to count. I want Excel to tell me how many students had 0 absences, how many had 1, how many had 2, etc. Okay, so once you get your bins, your classes typed in, we want to come to the cells right next to our bins, and we want to highlight them because I'm telling Excel, this is where I want you to put the answers. Once I highlight those cells, go up here and click in your formula bar. And the first thing I have to type is an equal sign. When I type an equal sign in Excel, Excel knows that, hey, she's fixing to use a formula. So that's how we tell it we're using a formula. I want it to do frequency. So I'm going to start typing the word frequency and see how this popped up with this blue box. This is awesome. Anytime that you're using a popular or commonly used formula, it will pop up for you. Once I see the one I want pop up, I can just hit Tab on my keyboard and it finishes typing it for me. Now, even better than that is the fact that this box right here stays up that shows me how to use my formula. I need the word frequency, open parentheses, which it already put for me. Then I have to tell it what my data array is. Well, your data, an array just means a group of something, a section. Your data is what we opened up from our file. So I'm going to highlight all the way down through cell 60 and see how it popped up here, A1 to A60. Then if I look down, I need a comma after that. Don't forget, pay attention. If there's any commas, then you have to put the commas in. And now it wants it to tell me my bin array. So I've got to scroll back up to where I typed in my bins, put my cursor in B1 and scroll down to B8. Now it shows me that I need to close my parentheses. Do not hit enter. I know it's your instinct because you think you're finished, but we don't hit enter to do a frequency distribution. Once we close our parentheses, we hold down Control, Shift, Enter. So on the keyboard, Control, Shift, Enter, and voila, there's my frequencies. So 2 students had 0 absences. 1 student had 1, 16 students had 3, etc. Now, one thing I always do, a little way to double check and make sure I haven't made any mistakes, is I'm going to highlight all my answers, including 1 empty cell underneath. And I'm going to go over here to the top right-hand corner, right beside that A to Z, you see the Greek letter sigma. Sigma means sum. I want it to add all of these up to make sure they equal 60. And they do. Because that just lets me know that I've accounted for all 60 of my students. I didn't miss any numbers or anything. So there's my frequencies. Just like you've been doing them by hand, you would get the same numbers. We know that after we calculate frequency, the next thing we do is relative frequency. So you should remember how to do relative frequency. What is it? That's right. We take every frequency and divide it by the total number in our data set. So I'm going to take each frequency and divide by 60, 2 divided by 60, 1 divided by 60, etc. But instead of doing these by hand, now that I'm in Excel, I'm going to use a formula. Okay, so what's the first thing we do when we're using a formula? We put in equals. And now what do I want to do for this first one? we said we wanted to do 2. So I click on the cell where the 2 is, divided by, so put in my slash for divided, and I want to divide by the total, which was 60. So if I hit enter, it gives me 0.03333. And we'll talk about formatting in a later, some of y'all already know how to format. We can go up here and we can tell it the number of decimal places, etc. But I'm just not going to fool with that right now. So we're just going to leave it like this. So approximately 3.3% of all my students had 0 absences. Now, one of the beauties of Excel is once I type a formula in for one spot, if I'm doing something repetitive, I can just copy the formula and not have to retype it. There are some things you have to do though. So I'm going to show you first what would happen if we left our formula like we just typed it and we copied it. To copy a formula, look how my cursor, when it's down here in the spreadsheet, is like a white, I want to use the word bold, but a thick white plus sign. It's not filled in. If I look at this little bitty box in the bottom right-hand corner of the cell, if I place my cursor over there, it turns into a darkened, a bold plus sign. If I click and drag, notice how it kind of highlights them with that box. It's going to copy my formula to all of those cells. So I'm going to let go. Oh, that's not good. I got a mistake. Okay, yeah, I knew I was going to get a mistake. Why am I getting a mistake? It says div for divide by 0. Well, we all know you can't divide by 0, right? So think about this. In this cell, I put C1 divided by C9, which was exactly what I wanted. When I copied it down, it brought the C's down one spot from where they were. So now it said C2 divided by C10. But that's not what I wanted, was it? I wanted C2 divided by C9 again. Same thing here. It changed it to C3 divided by C11. Not what I wanted. I want these numbers to change, C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, etc. But I don't want this reference to change. I want to divide by 60 every single time. So let me clear this out and show you the correct way to do it. So let's go back up here to our formula. These references, C1 and C9, are called relative references. They are relative to where the formula is. So when I copy the formula, for example, if I bring it down one cell, we know that it changed the numbers by one cell. But I don't want C9 to change. I want to divide by C9 every time. So to make C9 what we call an absolute reference, we go back in and we put a $sign in front of our C and a $sign in front of our 9. That tells Excel, do not change this. No matter where I copy this formula to, always leave C9 the same. So I'm going to hit enter. Didn't change that answer, but watch when I copy. Now they are correct. C2 divided by C9, C3 divided by C9, C5 divided by C9. So just the letter and the number, relative reference, it will change. If you have a $sign in front of your column and a $sign in front of your row, then that is your absolute reference. So these are my relative frequencies. 18% of all of my students had 4 absences. Okay. Now, once again, let's sum these up to make sure they add up to 1, because we know that all of our relative references have to equal 1. There we go. Use that sum key again. I'm doing good. Okay. So I'm trying to teach you a little bit about Excel for those of you that are not familiar with it while I'm teaching you how to do this particular problem. So we'll be using relative and absolute references all throughout the semester. We know that our next column should be cumulative relative frequency. Now remember, cumulative relative frequency is what? It is the current frequency plus everything above it. So if I'm looking for cumulative relative frequency for my very first class, my very first bin, then we know it's the same as relative frequency, right? We've talked about this when we were doing them by hand. So all I have to do is put in equal, click D1, hit enter, and it just copies the number over. Okay. But for our next cumulative relative frequency, if you were doing this by hand, you would say this number plus this number, correct? So to do a formula, I'm going to say equals the relative frequency for this line plus the cumulative relative frequency from above. So D2 plus E1, enter, gives me my answer. So now I can just copy my formula down through the rest and see it automatically does my cumulative relative frequencies for me. Now I know you may be thinking, ugh, I'm not good at Excel. I don't know Excel. I could have done this by hand faster. Well, maybe this problem you could have, but you'll be faster next time. And the next time you'll be even faster. So by the time you get to ones that have 1,000 numbers in them, you'll have it done in a couple of minutes where it would take you an hour to do it by hand. So don't try to cheat. Don't just do it with the calculator and type in the answers, because you're going to have to know how to use formulas in Excel. In this formula, we didn't need any absolute references because we did want each spot to change every time. So for this one, I wanted D2 plus the one above it. When I copied it down, I wanted D3 plus the one above it, E2. Then I wanted D4 plus E3. So I did want my references to change every time. And as always, we know that cumulative relative frequency, when I get to my last bin or my last class, has to equal 1. So we're done with frequency, cumulative relative frequency. Now, the next step, which we haven't done by hand, because I'm not going to ask you to draw any charts or graphs by hand, luckily, we're going to construct what's called a histogram. A histogram is a just easy way that we display our frequencies. Just makes it easy to read. Consumers, people using our statistics really like simple bar graphs. So to do our histogram, give me a second. I gotta hide something that y'all can't see so that I can see my tabs up here. Okay, so go up here in Excel and click this data tab. In the far right hand side, you see data analysis. Now, if you're on a computer in the lab, you're going to see data analysis because it's already been enabled. If you just used your Office 365 to download Excel to your laptop or a home computer or something, and you don't see it, then you have to enable it. To enable it, you go over to the File tab, scroll all the way to the bottom to Options. When that box pops up, click Add-ins. Look at the bottom where it says Manage. Make sure it says Excel Add-ins and click Go. and then you want to put a check mark in Data in Analysis Tool Pack and click OK. So if you don't see it, follow those steps. I know that was kind of quick, and those instructions are also in your textbook. So we're going to click Data Analysis, and a box will pop up. And I'm going to scroll until I find Histogram. Click on it, click OK. And now it tells me what it wants to know. So it wants to know my input range. My input range is always my original data set. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to scroll until I get all 60 numbers and see how it automatically put it in, A1 to A60. Then I'm going to click my cursor in the bin range. I'm going to scroll back up and I'm going to highlight my bins. So these first two steps are very much like what we did when we were doing frequency. Now, see this box that says labels? If I have any labels on my spreadsheet, then I want to make sure I check that box. If I don't have labels, then I want to leave it unchecked. I don't have labels on here. I don't have wording above these numbers that tell you what they are. If I did, I would check the labels box, and that basically tells Excel to ignore the words. I always want to make sure new worksheet is checked, and I want to put a check mark in chart output. Okay, so enter your bin range, enter your input range, double check if you need labels, new worksheet, and chart output. Click OK. And there's my histogram. I can make it a little bit bigger so you can see it better. And remember, we talked in class about how we want to make this more appealing. We want it to be more descriptive. I don't want to just say histogram. I want to say what it is. So what were we talking about? We were talking about absences. So I can click histogram and make it be absences. I can click over here and I can change colors and styles. I can do all sorts of things. So you can just kind of play around. I can change the word frequency. I would want to change the word bins. We always want to get rid of the word more, okay? And we've talked about this stuff in class. I'm just kind of reminding you. And there's not like a perfect answer for the formatting. It's just kind of your opinion of what makes it look better. But some things like changing these words to better words, we've said how we always want to do those. And if you look right here, it shows you your frequency, so we know where these numbers came from. Now, if you're thinking, okay, this was great, but I needed my other information too so that I could answer my problems or whatever, it's still there. Look down here in the left-hand corner. Sheet 1 is what we're on now. But if I click where it says data, there's my original work. It just put our chart on a new sheet for us. Okay. So there we go. We've done frequency, relative frequency, cumulative relative frequency, and we have learned how to do a histogram. And along the way, hopefully I have taught you some things about using Excel in general. Let me know if you have any questions. Follow along with this, open the files up, and do your work. I'll see y'all next time. Bye.